the only desire I have. Otherwise, I don't have any desire to see. Now, Chong happened to come back home and reach the doorstep where she got the last bit of conversation between the monk and her father. And when she heard that her father could have his eyesight back, she too had a tingling excitement from top to toe. But that excitement also was quick to fade away when she heard 300 rice bags. She said, oh, but is it possible? Is it possible father might get his eyesight back? But where will I go for 300 rice bags? And after that, every passing day, every single day, there was one and only one thought that kept going in her mind constantly. 300 rice bags. A few days later, there was a merchant ship that came and docked in that village. And it was customary those days to make an offering to the sea god to ensure calm waters for the journey. So there was a man from the ship who came and stood in the marketplace and made an announcement. Here, we want a young girl to volunteer to be sacrificed to the sea god. Anybody? Anybody know of a girl like that? The townspeople didn't pay much attention. They all went about their chores. So he repeated, anyone, one girl, young girl to volunteer to be offered as sacrifice. Oh, we are willing to offer 300 rice bags in return. And now Chong, who happened to be in the marketplace at that time, her ears perked up. She rushed to the man and said, sir, is that true? Did you say 300 rice bags? He said, yes, 300 rice bags indeed. She said, without any hesitation, she said, I am willing to come. I am willing to offer myself as sacrifice to the sea god. Please take me. He said, very well then, come, let's go. She said, I have a request to make of you, sir. You see, can you ensure that these 300 rice bags are given as an offering to the temple at Mongol? I have prayed for my father to have his eyesight back. He thought and said, of course, I can get that done. And she said, and one more thing, sir. Please let me have one last look at my father, have a word with him, and bid goodbye to him before I come with you. He said, hurry up, go along. So Chong ran home as fast as her feet could carry her. She went home, her heart was heavy. And then she cooked a delightful meal for her father. It was possibly the last time she would be sitting and eating a meal with him. And as they were eating, she said to her father, Father, if you had your eyesight back, promise me you'll find a nice person, remarry and settle down and live happily. Will you do that? Shim was very busy eating. He said, ha ha, Chong, you talk funnily today, my dear daughter. What is the matter? If I ever had to have my eyesight back, I would only want to look at you, the wonderful daughter that the whole village talks so wonderfully about, admiringly about, and these wonderful hands that have cooked such a delightful meal for me. This is too delicious. And he licked his chopsticks as he ate. But Chong couldn't utter one word. She wouldn't tell her father because he couldn't agree. And before even they could finish their meal, there was a loud knock at the door, a gruff voice. It was the man from the ship. He said, Chong, you are late. What is the matter? Come now. And Chong just had to drop her spoon into the plate and be dragged away by the man. Shim didn't understand what was happening. He said, Chong, who is this man? Where is he taking you, Chong? Chong was walking away, being dragged by that man. Shin didn't know what was happening. He picked his stick and staggered and stumbled out of the house, where he learned from the neighbors about Chong's decision to sacrifice herself for her father's eyesight. He said, Chong, dear daughter, what have you done? You should have told me. I kept saying I needed to see just so I could see you. And if you weren't there, this eyesight doesn't mean anything to me at all. Please come back, Chong. Please come back. But Chong was far away. She could only turn back slightly and tell, take care, father, take care, and walk. Aboard the ship, in the middle of the waters, when the great waves were rising and crashing, the man came to Chong and said, Chong, get ready, now it's time. So Chong went, stood on the deck of the ship, clasped her hands in prayer. I am not scared of death. I just want my father to have his eyesight back, she said, and jumped into the waters. And back home, horrified and helpless and grief-stricken, Shim grew weaker and weaker by the day. He would not eat for days. Some neighbors checked on him now and then. And sometimes he would just wander off into the village and not return for days. And sometimes nobody even knew where he was. A few days later, that ship was approaching land after its business. It was returning to dock at another town. The men aboard the ship saw a most wondrous sight. Floating on the waters was an enormous, a magnificent looking lotus. They were very surprised. What is a lotus flower doing in the middle of the sea? How did it even bloom there? So they cast a big net, a huge net, and pulled it aboard the ship. It was very heavy, so they had to take a lot of efforts to pull it aboard. And when they brought it, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful to look at. So they thought they could present it to the king of the land, hoping for a reward of some sorts. So when they took it to the king of the land, he was amazed at looking at this flower. What is this flower? And he had it placed in his chambers. And later during that day, when he was alone, he stared at it, he gazed at it. What is this beautiful flower? The colors were so bright. It was a mix of red and pink and, oh, breathtaking. And as he was staring and staring at it, the most wondrous thing happened. The petals started to open up steadily and gently. One petal after another petal after another petal, until the entire lotus opened up. And who should be standing there in between? Coyly and daintily, pale but beautiful as ever, dear Chong herself. The king was startled. Who are you? How did you come into this flower? Where have you come from? So Chong said, she narrated the whole story. She said, I sacrificed myself to the sea so that my father could have his eyesight back. But the sea god, he took mercy on me and sent me back inside this flower. And then when she spoke and spoke about herself, her father, her kind villagers, her life, the king's heart was very touched and melted every episode and anecdote that she spoke about. And so much so that he liked her noble nature and kind and caring nature that he asked her to marry him. And after some thought, Chong agreed. So Chong and the king were married, and she became the queen of the land. Now, I must tell you that The temple at Mangun had been made the offering of 300 rice bags as the man aboard the ship had promised. But Shim had not regained his eyesight yet. Though Chong became the queen of the land, her heart was heavy. Her mind always thought about what had happened to her father. Where was he? How was he? The king realized this and he said, "Let us announce a feast, a banquet, a magnificent feast for people who cannot see. And who knows, maybe your father will come too." So Chong agreed. And there was a magnificent banquet which was thrown. A feast fit for kings, for people who couldn't see. So villagers from near and afar, they all came, ate to their heart's content, and happily blessed the king and queen and went their way. The feast lasted for 4 days. It was the last day of the feast. The sun was setting. And Chong, who had been hopeful till that day, she was very restless. She didn't think she would see her father. And with every passing moment, the dichotomy of thoughts in her heart, in her mind, was so disheartening. If her father was cured, which was a good thing, then he wouldn't be at the feast at all, which meant she wouldn't be able to see him ever again. And if he hadn't been cured, then where was he? However would she find out? She couldn't control herself. And with tears rolling her cheeks, she just buried her face into her palms and started crying inconsolably. And then she heard it. A voice, a feeble voice, a cracked up voice. "I was told there is a feast here. I hope I'm not late. Any food left for an old man?" The man spoke as he approached the palace, faltering in his steps, in tattered clothes. He looked very tired and shabby. Chong lifted her eyes, her face, and she saw. It was him. It was unmistakably him. It was Shim, her father. She couldn't control herself and just ran into his arms. And Shim was very tired as he was coming. He was emotionless. He just stood there. She ran to him and said, Father, it is me. It is your dear Chong." Shim just stood there bluntly and emotionlessly. He said, "Young lady, you must be mistaken. It's a coincidence your name is Chong too." "Is that so? I had a daughter named Chong, but she is dead now." She said, "No, father, it is me, your daughter Chong. The sea god had mercy on me and sent me back." And then she narrated the events that assured Shim that she was indeed his daughter Chong. And now Shim was full of emotion, overwhelmed. He said, "Oh, dear Chong, after all that you've done for me and endured, if only I could see you." And at that moment, something magical happened. The gods were benevolent, and suddenly Shim could open his eyes and see a very hazy picture in the beginning, and which became more and more clear. And he was able to see his daughter Chong. And he said, "Oh, Chong, I'm able to see you now." Chong said, "Is that true, father?" He said, "Yes, I am able to see you." And so as Chong and Shim wept in each other's arms, the whole village stood there and saw this beautiful reunion of father and daughter. And it is said that even to this day in South Korea, there is a town called Gokseong, where they celebrate this festival for Shim Chong, in remembrance of Shim Chong, in grandeur and in all fervor and pomp, to remember this devotion that Chong had for her father and her filial piety. If I may show a picture, this is in the town of Gokseong. This is Shim. There is a statue. So this is Shim and this is Chong coming out from the lotus flower. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. You really got involved in that story. You really like it.
Oh yes, Eric. Yes, yeah. It kind of touched me when I read about it, and yes. So and it was about healing, and Shim's eyesight gets healed, and I liked it. There's a parallel in Hindu mythology also about a boy called Shravan who takes care of his parents, takes them across his shoulders because both of them cannot see. Yeah, so this I found in another culture. When I read about this, it really touched my heart, and I thought I should share it with everybody.
Wonderful. Okay. Anybody, any thoughts?
Wonderful telling, Divya.
Thank you, Seema. Thanks.
Your voice is so soothing. It was so wonderful to hear.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You're a wonderful teller yourself.
No, thank you.
This is Jean. I loved the voices that you gave to the people and the journey that you took us on. It was a wonderful journey. I felt as if I were going with you on. So
thank you so much.
I've not heard the story before, so now I'm curious to find it. And what is it known as? What is the title of the story?
So the title is Shim Chong, but as I read, I understood that there are many versions of the story. And it's a very old story, and it's used widely in many ballads. So there is this Pansori style of musical storytelling in Korea, in which this is widely performed too, this Shim Chong ballad. It's called Shim Chong. Shim is the father and Chong the daughter, so Shim Chong. The names are slightly different in certain, there are variations to this, but broadly this is the story. Thank you, Jean.
Great job, Divya. I really enjoyed the narration part of it, and I think you brought out a truly wonderful visual quality to your storytelling, and I could imagine those places, the mountain, the sea, the ship, and the palace as you spoke. So I think it was truly evocative and beautifully visual. Well done.
Thank you, Divya. The story was nice too. Beautiful, Divya. Beautiful. Like somebody had mentioned it.
Okay.